Delighted to say that today I have with me the wonderful Janice Connolly.
Hello, hiya.
Janice, if you don't know, is a local institution, and she is a performer, both as an actor and as a comedian, and also very involved in raising community spirit. So let's get on with the show.
Lovely.
We most recently were talking around the work that you've been doing in South Birmingham with communities around the area that I grew up, actually, in Druids Heath.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about the community spirit coming forward and so on. And I rather controversially said, well, not everyone's memories were so great. So, so what did you personally think of that?
I think the original post that I made was probably in praise of community arts and saying how important I thought they were and how rehearsing this play that had been researched up at Druids Heath, that was sort of looking at the history of the Gladiator pub. I had been blown away by the way that people turned up twice a week, learned the lines, really worked really hard and responded to each other. And I was concerned about the way that arts generally are not valued enough. Certainly grassroots arts are not valued enough. I had researched that play in Druids Heath, and I was interested in the fact that you lived there, and you were saying this is not. You didn't see the play, did you?
I didn't,
No,
unfortunately, John.
So I think what I was kind of praising was people getting involved with drama and stuff. I think what you were possibly picking up was that why are we celebrating the Gladiator pub, which was not a great place to be, and a lot of not good things happening around it. In terms of the research, and I know that you were talking about your own cultural background as well and feeling that was not respected.
It wasn't so much my cultural background, because one thing that I can point out is that not all brown-skinned people, for example, have a certain cultural background. I mean, I would say for myself, I'm just a Brummie, I don't have any, fairly unusual, I suppose, to not have any real affiliation to, say, a religious community or so on. But the very fact that you are brown-skinned in some areas back in the day and now, sadly, means that you're not treated the same way or accepted.
I hadn't spoken to any brown-skinned people in the Druids Heath area. In fact, I didn't come across any at all. Whether that was because the organisation that I was working with didn't have those relationships. I think there were some kids actually walking outside the arts centre. I talked to them a little bit, tried to get them in the play, but kind of a bit interested, but not massively interested. But in general, I think that what we were trying to do is to get... People got so many bad stories to tell about the Gladiator, actually. It was quite hard getting some good, positive ones.
Oh, really?
Because, I think the area was sort of down on it. I think it was a kind of a notorious place. But when we were speaking to people at the beginning of the Gladiator, before, I think it sort of fell upon hard times, I think, maybe drug culture, I don't know. I'm just supposing some of these things. But when we spoke to people that had been sort of there at the beginning, there was a community spirit there, and I completely respond to the fact that you're saying not everybody was welcome, and I'm sure they weren't. But I wasn't speaking to people that was the case for. And I think as a working class place, what we were trying to do is to say, let's not keep telling the bad stories. Let's tell some good ones as well. But I completely appreciate what you're saying.
Thanks, Janice.
But it never came up in research, really.
And I just want to point out that I was just making that point as a standalone point, because celebrating, quite an outlier community. I mean, let's face it, a thinker stage, really. from the start.
Yeah.
I'm really in favour of that, of not losing, the stories of people. And that includes, negative stories as well.
Yeah.
It's part of the whole
Yeah,
fabric of the place.
But people are very quick to tell negative stories about that area, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got quite a few negative stories, but it's life, isn't it? It is life, and to dismiss a whole community. I mean, I think the bigger picture today, or the debate today, is around gentrification of areas and pushing people out and so on. And there's no doubt that people were pushed out to that estate. So, it had a bit of a raw deal from the start.
And now they're being pushed out again.
Absolutely. And, I think that you and I see very much, are aligned about that issue, Janice. I think it's very sad that, people are, for the sake of ostensibly bringing up an area, it removes so much, doesn't it? It leaves the original people with so little sometimes.
Yeah, and also because I think that it's in a prime spot, it's up on a hill, the air's clean, you can get on the motorway really quickly. And they're going to move all the council people, people using council properties, make it private. And some people have bought their own council houses, and it's a bit of a mess, really.
Okay. Well, the politics of it, I'm sure, are very complex, but I know that you're doing some great work with community groups there. So, and it is brought the attention to that issue from different perspectives, which sometimes doesn't happen.
Yes.
Right, well, the bigger picture is, the role of communication, isn't it, and performance included in the sort of world that we live in today. Very messy world. And one of the things that we've been chatting about is the kind of freedom of speech debate, who gets to speak, what they're allowed to say, and so on. So as a comic performer as well, I mean, you must have seen the debates also in terms of the cancel culture and so on. And I just think this is an invaluable opportunity to find out what somebody in the business feels, Janice.
Oh, I wish I knew more about the cancel culture and comedy. I think that it's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Cancel culture. I don't think anybody should say stuff that is going to offend anybody. Anyway, so I can't imagine me ever being cancelled, for example. However, I do think I say what I want to say. Yeah. So I think what I want to say is right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do know what I mean.
So I think that I have got free speech because I can say what I want to say, because I'm not going to get... The only way I could get cancelled if we were living in a terrible state where if you criticise the powers that be, you got cancelled.
Yeah. Do you think that's happening now?
Oh, I don't know. It's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was talking to a young woman today because I'm doing some research around free speech, and she was very clear that she felt that there was this a higher canopy in the world, really, who were dictating what was regarded as being the truth and what was regarded as being not the truth, and manipulating that. And I think all the fake news and the AI really clouds it, because you don't know what's real anymore. And I think that's very, very difficult when we don't know what the truth is. But in terms of comedians, I think mostly when people have been cancelled, as far as I can see, they were being offensive towards one group or another. And I don't think that's what free speech is. I know a lot of people think that free speech equals the right to offend
and be cruel and nasty
towards people. Yeah, I don't think it is that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's more about punching up and disagreeing with the status quo is what I think it is.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I heard that phrase yesterday, actually, punching up rather than knocking down.
Yeah.
I think it encapsulates things so well, doesn't it? So I think we should be free to criticise the powers that be and as he said, we don't even know what is the truth because people have got an agenda and they've got power and they're feeding that agenda to the rest of us. So it's okay to do that, but knocking people down, which is cheap humour, really, cruel humour.
Sort of Mr. School ground humour, isn't it? We're bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Well, we remember when, racist and sexist, disablist comedy was up there and on the TV all the time and in clubs and so on, and that undoubtedly made our conversation about the estate
made it harder.
Yeah, no doubt that was what was driving people partly to be racist and so on. So it does have an impact. Humour does have an impact. But these sort of satirical views of politicians and so on, I think that should be fairly done, shouldn't it? I mean, that should be available, I think, to people.
Yeah.
Is there much of that in the industry at the moment?
What, political kind of
satire? Or are people a bit worried about doing that and feel that they might be censored?
I think that's an interesting debate. I think that possibly comedy's always got a bit of a left-wing feel. I remember when Mrs. Thatcher went, I was thinking, what the comedian's going to say? What material have they got now? What to get a Labour government? Who can say what? I think there is a lot of satire, but it tends to be, and I think I don't like the phrase right-wing or left-wing, I've just realised, but if you maybe say a Tory supporter, or I think that people would have thought that it was too much baiting the government, and now there's a Labour government. Having said that, I think there is quite a lot of jokes around Keir Starmer and stuff. I think the traditional left, is probably more likely to do satirical jokes against the traditional right. I think the traditional right would say they're not allowed to tell any jokes. I think they would say that.
That's right, and that's what
I think they would say.
Yeah, I agree. And just in general society, I think there's a lot of noise from right-wing people who are, demanding freedom of speech, but to do what? To
do what?
Hate people. As far as I can see, but that's my personal view.
I don't like anything that's too sort of fueled by hatred. I remember going to see sort of left-wing things a long time ago, maybe in the 70s, and songs like build a bonfire, put Thatcher on the top, I can't remember, it's all around her, and then you burn, sorry for swearing, the fucking lot. I don't like anything like that, actually. I think that's just as bad.
Yeah.
I remember thinking then, I don't think this is the way forward. I don't think this is the way forward. We've got to find some way of not being childish. I think it's very childish. We need to listen to each other, and I just want, for us to find a better way together, really. And one side saying you're like this, you're fascist, the other side going, you're the fascist. But I think there is humour in all that, because we're talking about humour. So I think it is the job of comedy to point out that everybody's calling everybody else a fascist. And I think things like the Now show that's on the radio on a Saturday is really good, because it looks at the news. They've obviously got a group of very bright comedians who sit around the table and respond to the news. And because it's the BBC, I do believe the BBC tries to be balanced, actually. They have to be. They have to appear to be balanced because of the way that they receive their funding. And I've worked with the BBC, and I know loads of people who have. And they do check things through and say, please don't say that. Whatever we think about that kind of stuff. But they do try and keep it balanced. So you do get both sides of a weak story, I think. And I value comedians kind of holding up a mirror to what's happening and showing the foolishness of it all, the inconsistency of it, the human fallibility of it, rather than saying, they're a twat, that's too simple. But there's so many clever ways of just saying, what do you think about this, really?
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. there is a lot of humour in the fact that people are now in an identity and they're supposed to have everything to do with identity, you know, in their blood. And then you've got another group and they're not allowed to think anything outside their particular identity, which is hilarious because, of course, nobody thinks exactly the same as some image. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a few funny stories around this, and there is like real material there. So I'll share one with you, Janice, which is that I was actually kicked out of my road WhatsApp group during COVID.
Right.
The reason being that apparently my posts that I put up had triggered people, or could potentially trigger people. And when well, it was interesting because when I joined, there were lots of people's cats on the images of cats and people's children's drawings, which was really nice, you know. But I thought, oh, it's a bit bland, really. I mean, you know, just because it's COVID, you don't have to sort of wallow in looking at pictures of cats.
What did you
you know, so I put up, somebody had sent me this fantastic video of people clapping for heroes, as we did, you know. And then when the camera panned round, it was actually a bargain booze lorry, which I thought was spot on, really. I mean, you know, like the bargain booze as the hero and everything. People can relate to that.
Yeah.
But that apparently was enough to potentially trigger people. So
interesting, the time of COVID, wasn't it? I think people did. People lost their sense of humour slightly. I suppose people would say it's too serious, it's no laughing matter. It's an interesting debate, isn't it? Is there anything where humour is not invited to the table? I think that's probably what it was, isn't it? COVID was too serious for you to be doing any kind of joking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
how did you feel about that?
Well, fine. To be honest. I mean,
good.
It was hardly going to ruin my day.
Exactly.
So,
brilliant.
And you know, the video is still available, I'm sure. So I thought it was, you know, it was quite witty.
But has it kind of carried on that kind of lack of relationship with your fellow people on your road?
Oh no, not
Fine.
at all.
Good. Well, that's absolutely brilliant.
And I think it was just one person, basically. I mean, this is another interesting point because now we've moved so much to social media, of course, and the decisions are really made by administrators or, you know, whoever.
Sometimes the one dissenting voice gets listened to more than everybody else going, well, we're not bothered. It's what if one person goes, this is triggering, this could be triggering. It's like everybody has to. Somebody said this in research to me this morning, and I thought there was some truth in it. Everybody has to listen to the one person who doesn't like it. And I don't know what you think about that. I think that's what happens.
Yeah.
Most people are going, we're not bothered. One person goes, I think it's terrible. And then it's sort of that attitude seems to have more potency than the majority of people are saying, well, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, my view, Janice, is that it's great that somebody has dissented.
Yes.
And they're brave people nowadays because, you know, when you've got a wall of people, maybe bots, saying one view, if you can actually stand there and say your other view online, that's great. I don't think that something should be taken down because of that necessarily. It depends what it is. I mean, if somebody appears and they say, you know, something very clearly beyond what we could live with, say they're suggesting that we harm other people and so on, then I think that's another matter. But somebody coming up with a different opinion, brilliant. I quite like that.
I agree with you. I like different opinions as well. It's interesting, the power of the one dissenting voice there.